I'm double screening with my laptop and a monitor.
Right.
Okay, I'm all good.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Welcome to Panels To Chords, where we talk about the music we listen to while reading comics. I'm Ben Howard.
And I'm Madi Butler.
And today, we're going to be talking about 99 Righteous Men. What? Satan. Well, the approximation of Satan will be in proximity of Satan. Anyway, for our viewers, the comic that we're reading today is called 99 Righteous Men. Madi, would you like to give it a summary?
Sure. It's about a priest named Daniel, who has kind of taken like a passing interest in a choir boy named Caleb. And Caleb, similarly interested, makes a passing comment about how he would sell his soul to the devil, I believe, which is a huge mistake. There's possession involved, religion, Catholicism, and I don't want to spoil the ending, but there's layers to it.
Oh, yes. It's also very, very gay.
Yeah,
which we love.
A bit explicit.
Oh, yeah. If you don't pick up on the fact that it's gay, then I don't know where you come from.
Yeah, you have missed something.
Oh, yeah. This particular comic comes from the indie horror artist Claude, a trans man artist from New Orleans, Louisiana. Well, okay. Well, I don't think he is exactly from New Orleans. He's from Louisiana, though. And Claude specializes in what he likes to describe as queer, erotic, gothic, supernatural horror. So everything that you ever loved about horror comes with a nice bit of gayness to it. Not always comfortable, though. What was that?
No. I'd say this certainly fits the bill of erotic, gothic horror.
Absolutely. Well, I read this. I make that sound so hipster and superiority complexy. I read the webcomic a while back, and I loved it because, quite frankly, I hadn't read a webcomic that... I read plenty of horror webcomics leading up to that point. Daniel, Soul to Call, a bunch of other stuff, but nothing as explicit as 99 Righteous Men. It is in your face with the sexual overtones, whether they be symbolic or just straight up sex stuff. So, I loved it. I loved it for the incredible art style by Claude, who has a nice, very nice combination of very clear manga influences combined with his own personal little touches, so that it's not like a copy and paste. It's very... How do I describe what I love about it so much? I love his work so much because Claude, everything he draws, particularly with characters, feels just so fleshy. Like, these are people with actual flesh on their bones that have folds.
Yeah, it's soft, but like flowy, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like they were drawn with a paintbrush type of thing.
Yeah.
And it just... I've always said I love the new rise in horror that we've been getting, especially from studios like A23, who seem to put out a new horror movie just about like every year, multiple horror movies. But some of them feel like they miss an element that I personally like in a lot of the horror that I've read in the past, is that there are very erotic undertones to it, as though they're speaking to very uncomfortable desires that people would rather keep buried because they're terrified at having those desires, and at the same time terrified of fulfilling those desires. So what better way to represent that than in these weird, like, pseudo undertones that horror does, where because there's a denial, you try to get rid of it through violence, or through, like, trying to reframe that desire as something monstrous. But by doing that, you just make it way more attractive. I mean, I don't know how to describe it any deeper because I left my Freudian education in college.
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot of Freud from the one psychology class I took, so...
Right. The last professor I had
really
called him like a coke fiend, so that tells you what she thought of him.
Will. Yeah, what really drew me to this comic was, it was like horrific, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't like in your face gory or anything, which it was more like the supernatural, like kind of haunting horror, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I think is more the kind that I prefer personally, but I really liked that aspect of it, and I really, really liked the art. That was definitely my favorite part, and I really liked the speech bubbles too. Whenever like the demon was talking or whatever, they were just kind of like drippy and like oozing, it looks like, so you could like tell
that was like a demon. Yeah. I think what made the supernatural work so much, and why it's that there was very much a human story behind this as well. Mm-hmm. I've always said this, but the best horror always has those elements of human drama to them. Now, they're not going to be like Dostoevsky or like Nabokov levels of like deep insight into people. But with any good horror, I like to see that that the human characters are developed, and that we see that they do have interpersonal relationships, because that always raises the stakes of any horrific situation, where it's like, you know that these are people with thoughts, feelings, and pathos. So if something bad happens to them, you feel worried for them, and part of you wants to see them live through it, even though you know that's not necessarily a guarantee that they're going to live through it, or that they're going to come out of it alive, but definitely not in one piece.
I think with this story especially, you get like a really good sense of who the characters are in a very short amount of time, especially with Caleb, because like he's so quickly possessed in the story, like, but even so, like, he was a pretty well-rounded character, and like through either context or like his actions at the beginning, like you can tell what type of person he is.
Yeah.
And you're like rooting for him.
Right. Then there is the one character in the room character in the story who is by far the most problematic character. But because, in a strange way, he is problematic and complicated, he's also the most interesting. And I can't remember his name right now. He's Daniel's old friend. Huh?
Adam?
Yeah, Adam. Who, by all fars, is, like, very terrible person. And, you know, a sexual predator. Specifically, he preyed on Daniel one time. But in a strange way, there's a sense of self-awareness on his part. And it's so... To me, it was... Like, I was uncomfortable every time he entered the room. But at the same time with Adam, he was also very... Well, it was interesting because at first you get the very, like, sense that he's just back in Daniel's life to prey on him again, or to make him feel bad about what... It's like, oh, Daniel, you made me, like... I got thrown out of, the church because of you. I got put on probation. And it's like, nah, dude, it's like... You took advantage of your friend, and... It's an interesting kind of arc where Adam goes from completely in a very sort of sociopathic way denying what he did and saying that, no, it was Daniel's fault. But then as he gets involved with Caleb's possession and Daniel's attempt to free Caleb of the possession, you see Adam changing little bit by little bit. And... Well, not to give it away, I don't want to give the ending away either, but he gets something of a redemption arc, but it's not much of a redemption.
It's a very complicated redemption arc.
Yeah.
Which I liked. I don't know. It was just like a short story, but like 3 complex and interesting characters. So... I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And I will admit, I had both a lot of fun and also something of a difficulty choosing the songs I wanted for this playlist. Because right now, I will say this particular comic was like tailored to my song choices, to what I normally listen to a T. Like... Yeah,
it's funny, because I look at all of your song choices, and they're all like even just the titles are just like, oh, okay, yeah, this fits. Although, I think mine are, like, pretty fitting, too, but...
Oh, yeah. Well, as always, mine tended to toward more to the overall aesthetic to the story, while yours aim more to the actual, like the story itself, like to the character relationships and all of that.
I do have one aesthetic pick this time, though.
Yes, you do. And I was very happy to see that aesthetic choice, too. I'm like, yes,
okay.
It's actually the perfect one. What?
I have maybe 2 aesthetic picks, then. But we can talk about that if you are ready to talk about your song picks.
Yes, I so am. I've been waiting for this because, again, so for the first time ever, I had an excuse just to go full on, like, goth music, full on heavy metal, because this was the perfect title for it. Everything else, I have either had to try to, if I wanted metal in the mix, I had to pick the one that actually is, like, approachable to the story, somehow appropriate, or like I even I'll admit when we did On a Sunbeam, I will admit that Telescope and On the Topmost Step of the Earth, I kind of just forced in there, even though looking back on it, they totally don't fit the story at all. I forced them in there, and shame on me always for doing that. But here on 99 Righteous Men, I did not have to hold back. I could choose the most creepy, sexually overtone, very disturbing sounding type of music that I wanted to. And
I think this is right where your music taste is.
To a T. So with my first choice is a band that I always, when I can, find an excuse to include them. And I included them last time. And looking back at it, again, they were totally inappropriate for that. But here, they're totally appropriate. In this case, Phallic Litanies by the greatest Greek heavy metal band of all time, Septic Flesh. And, well, what can I say about Septic Flesh other than quickly that they are Well, they are first and foremost a death metal band, but throughout their very extensive career have experimented with opera, electronic music, and orchestra into their music, and they do some type of weird math science where they actually make it sound like it fits together. And this, I can't remember which album of theirs this Phallic Litanies comes from, but in this particular song, has a very kind of dreamlike story to it, so it's hard to describe other than it takes place in some type of palace, dungeon, or room of passion. There's wine, there's naked bodies everywhere, and you are just invited to go crazy. Just go crazy. Think of this if you were like partying with, whoever the fuck that name of that one Greek god who loves wine and sex is. Dionysus, yes. Dionysus. Wow.
The only reason I remember that, honestly, is because of The Wicked and the Divine. Dionysus is the party god.
Right, exactly. And here's me insulting a band from Greece who probably were exactly thinking of Dionysus when they wrote that song. Shame on me. So, I chose that song just because I love... Well, first off, I love the opening because it kind of makes me think of the comic itself, where the opening, it throws you off a little bit, where it's like there's no like heavy metal elements whatsoever. It's like a very more like oriental sounding kind of low key type of music, and then we get to the scary parts, kind of like 99 Righteous Men. And I liked it because, for me, the most thing that 99 Righteous Men was about thematically, at least one of the themes was about, especially from Caleb's end, repressed desire. Because I got the sense that Caleb was very much repressing his own personal desires. Mm-hmm. The fact that he wanted to be he wanted to be in relationships with men, but he felt like he couldn't. And so I got the sense of temptation from him, which is what first drew him toward all the crazy witchcraft and satanic stuff that he got into. Was that kind of idea of like, we're willing to give you any desire, a desire you want. So come on in and enjoy. The only catch, of course, is your eternal soul. So that's why I first chose Phallic Litanies, because for me that kind of like very a song about a realm of lust you can enjoy, but with those kind of like gothic heavy metal overtones to it. Maybe, for me personally, they fit the story aesthetically.
Yeah. Definitely a fitting song. My first pick is Intervention by Arcade Fire, which I was recently reminded of when I did my annual, Arcade Fire exists, I should listen to that. It's from their Neon Bible album, also fittingly named. And this one, I would say, is more of an aesthetic pick because it is, the backing music is all organs, which, just makes you think church thoughts, I guess.
Right.
The lyrics aren't so much as, on as I think my usual picks are, but I think it kind of tells a story of like a very like well, I guess it does fit, but in a different way than what I was thinking. But it's about like a righteous man who devotes his life to the church, but not necessarily in like a helpful way, like more of just like a righteous, like evangelical person who is not so much living like a good life, but is just kind of being loud about his faith. So I guess that it's fitting in that way. But I was between this and like a different Arcade Fire song called Crown of Love, which I like, but I think this one just has an overall better fit to it. So that is why I picked that one.
Nice.
It's also very sad.
Well, it's an Arcade Fire song, isn't it supposed to be sad?
Yeah, and that traditionally Arcade Fire songs fit into that like the sad song category.
That sad indie rock sound.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
For a second, I was like, "Oh wait, it's from the Funeral album," which would also be fitting, but it's not. It is from Neon Bible, which is a really, really good album.
Right. And for my personal second pick, well, this pick I believe is in French. I'm not going to attempt to read the French title because I don't want to butcher the French language because I'm already probably going to get the name of the band wrong. So in English, this song is called, and I'm not making this up, it is called Bitchier Than Any Bitches.
That's
by
great.
Ortiz. Isn't it?
I saw that and I was like, wow, this is just the best thing I've seen all day.
Yes. From what I've been able to gather, I first actually heard this song from the Raw soundtrack. I don't know if you got to see a chance to see. Well, Raw comes in the, you could say, like, later part of the movie where the main character, where she finally has her kind of like, her sexual, her personal awakening, yada, yada, yada. And she's just listening to the song, and it's kind of like, yeah, I'm a bad bitch. Which is kind of the point of the song itself. It's about being the baddest bitch, the one who can, really just put the boys in their place, who can really just eat up men, take whatever they want from them sex-wise, and then toss them aside. I just remember because at the very end, they just throw in a line about 666 into there. Why? I do not know, other than that, who knows, maybe this is a song about succubi. Who knows? Look, I don't know much about the song, I just know that, like, two very talented French women decided to make it, and they decided, let's just make a song called Bitchier Than Any Bitches. And for that, I have to give them points. Solely really on principle.
Nothing more than that song title.
Yes. And why did I choose this one? I think just the in general sexual, again, it's the sexual overtone of it, and with the little hints of like, kind of like, it's kind of demonic in a way. The thing that really caught me about Bitchier Than Any Bitches was that it's this weird combination of like pop, EDM, and hip hop with a serious kind of uncomfortable gothic tone to it. It's not solely uncomfortable because it's so explicitly sexual, like, that's nothing today, like, that's been done before, but it's that there was something always, at least for me, offbeat, and I think it's because of how the EDM bits have a very more down-tuned tone to them. So everything that they were saying was coming off sinister. And then when they get to the 666 part at the end and things kind of like drop down a little bit and the voice gets altered so that their vocals are a lot more like bass and more male-ish, that it kind of noted much more sinister kind of edge to it, which is something that, again, I associate with 99 Righteous Men, where it's pretty much a story about dark desire and the kind of like tones under there. And I wish I could be a lot more descriptive, but I'm an aesthetic guy. And I just go with my gut and what I choose for these song choices, because to me, they just somehow, I force them in my brain to make them link with each other. So, yeah.
I think my next pick is, well, I mean, definitely I also went for, like, the more aesthetic and, like, tonally appropriate song over lyric. I honestly, in my next pick, which is Bread and Wine by Basement Revolver. Basement Revolver was on my Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify this week. Like, it knew we were going to be recording a podcast. So thanks, Spotify. We're not sponsored by Spotify, but I would like to throw that shout out in there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I had a little trouble understanding the lyrics, but, you know, Bread and Wine, classic church combo, that is brought up multiple times throughout the story. So, it's a little more shoegazy than I would typically associate with this comic, but I could also, at the same time, like, I could hear the song, like, playing in a dive bar, so that's why I picked it.
I'm sure that Adam has spent enough time in dive bars, he eventually heard it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even, like, the bar in the book, I was like, okay, that looks kind of, you know, a little divey, but...
Right.
But yeah, so very generally, tonally, it is, I think, fitting, which is why I picked it. But don't go looking for the lyrics, because I tried and they do not exist.
Really? Are they? They're English, though, aren't they?
Yeah,
like
they're in
lyrics?
English. I did want to, like, listen to it and, like, try and write them down, but then I just ran out of time to do that, so...
That's okay.
Come back to that.
The good thing is I already know most of these songs, so I already know what their lyrical content is, even though I can't give you direct quotes right now.
Yeah, this is, like, the Arcade Fire one I know very, very well. Actually, a lot of these picks are going back to songs that were on my, like, most played in college.
Nice.
So 3 of them I know very, very well. But yeah, this one was new to me.
Very nice. And speaking of, I'm glad that you picked up, mentioned, like, religious overtones, because they were all over this book. But in, that very twisted type of way that honestly usually comes with, like, demon possession or, like, satanic stories. Like The Exorcist or The Omen, where the holy is somehow perverted in a way. That's what makes it unholy as it is. It's like, oh, there's a cross. How do I make it not holy? Turn it upside down. I am a genius. Even though technically speaking, the upside down cross is actually like the sign of St. Peter, not Satan. At least that's why I hear, but who cares? Look, if it causes controversy and brings people into the movie theater, do it, right? Anyways, speaking of which, I bring up because the perversion of the holy and the sacred is pretty much the topic of my third song choice, which is Christian Woman by Typo Negative. Typo Negative is unique in that they are for kind of a gothy doom metal band from the 90s that never got that big. They got metal big, but not like big as in the sense how big, say, Korn, Limp Bizkit, and all those other 90s metal acts did. And Christian Woman is, how do I describe it? It is a song about pretty much this guy who has, at least from what I can remember the lyrics, who has an sexual obsession with a Christian woman. And how he just has this burning desire for her, but he knows he can't have her because of her faith. And it is very sacrilegious. It is very much what I think all my teachers at Sunday school were warning about me when they said, be careful of like the outside world and how media can influence you. And I felt that, personally speaking, that desire for a whole person that you can't have because their first relationship comes with God and celibacy totally fits the bill for how Caleb felt toward Daniel, and how probably Daniel felt toward Caleb too, despite the fact that he's a priest. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, Daniel is gay, but he is also a Catholic priest, so he has God to supposedly, curb his desires, but at the same time, he can't hide from them. Caleb, on the other hand, is not that deep into God, and even as a choir boy, simply just as a choir boy, he still has not, you could say, gone that close to God as Daniel has, so he still has that desire toward Daniel. And kind of like with Christian Woman, how it's sung, it sounds like the Christian woman is being desired by Dracula himself, because the singer of Typo Negative sounds like friggin' Dracula or something. So
yeah,
for me,
like we all do in the morning.
Yes, exactly. But he made it into his singing voice officially. And I just felt that's kind of that tension, that kind of like dark sacrilegious tension of coveting the holy, but not for God, but for sexual desire, and how it can even cause a dark, fiery, i.e. satanic lust in you, fit the bill so much, because that's what draws Caleb toward to the satanic himself, is that he can't satisfy his desires because he desires a holy man who just will not give it to him because God comes first. Which just brings Caleb into the arms of the satanic.
As you do.
Yeah. And I think it's what the song best does is highlight how that repressed sexuality can be a form of pain and torment. And for Caleb, now Caleb has it way worse than any straight guy out there could. But it's that same kind of like craving, desiring someone so much but not being able to have them can be a form of torment.
Actually, I think our picks line up here, kind of.
Oh, yeah?
Because my next one was a song called Demon Host by Timber Timber.
Nice.
And the lyrics here, okay, it's like a kind of, I guess, like haunting. The melody is pretty simple. Like the overall, it's not anything as grandiose as like the Arcade Fire song that I chose. but the lyrics here, I think, line up super well, because it's about I think about a guy who sees a ghost or like a demon, and just kind of going through like the religious aspect of like, now what? But there's like it deals with like repentance and like kind of the dread of seeing or having like a hellish satanic experience, I guess.
Right.
With a demon. So the lyrics that really like sold this one for me were, I've become what I most fear, and I know there's no such thing as ghosts, but I've seen the demon host, which I think is like super fitting for like kind of the middle beginning of the story.
Right.
Yeah. So super good song. Actually, like, and I really thought, I know I messaged you about this earlier today, but I really thought about doing something like kind of flippant, like Losing My Religion by R.E.M., but
right.
the more, like the obvious pick, right?
Yeah,
like
I know.
Song, but I think, actually, I don't think anyone really lost religion in this book at all.
No. There was no loss of religion. It's just Satan Cain bumbling in, just like, hey, you sure you want to be Christian? Because I can bone you.
Yeah, it was interesting because, like, the more I thought about it, I was like, well, that's not really what this book is about. And actually, I think it brings, like, both Daniel and Adam closer to God. So that was interesting. But yeah, that is why I didn't go for the obvious REM connection there.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you didn't, because the choice you made was a lot more interesting.
Because, I don't think anyone would have loved listening to this playlist and having Michael Stipe in the middle of it as much as we all love Michael Stipe. But.
Right. I mean, I just love it because, like, oh, wow. Oh, Madi's going with a way darker song choice than I ever heard her.
Dude, yes, I did.
The last time I ever saw you got that dark was, what's his name in The Bad Seed?
Oh, yeah, Nick Cage.
Yeah, Nick Cage and Bad Seed.
Yeah, maybe we should revisit Long Lost now that it has ended.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk for another time.
Absolutely. Well, for my next pick, that would be... I'm checking my playlist. Oh yeah. Forgive Me, Father, I Have Sinned by Cradle of Filth. Which is the most blatant... Which I think is even more of a blatant song choice than Losing My Religion would have been. Because... Well, I'm not sure if Cradle of Filth needs much of an introduction. They are the quintessential, if you got into a goth phase or were first discovering black metal phase in high school, Cradle of Filth was the first thing you probably listened to. And their song, Forgive Me, Father, is quite simply as about a priest who is seduced by a demonic entity of lust and whatnot. So in other words, I could, again, not have chosen a more obvious song to fit this story.
That is pretty on the nose.
Yes, it is so on the nose, it is cartoonish. Just like the song, but in a very... That's why it sounds probably more like a dark rock and roll song than it does a heavy metal song. But in a way, I like it because of the fact that it's so obvious and so kind of more rockish. That is a nice little bit of more popular media that I think could honestly fuse into 99 Righteous Men a little bit. Because as out there as it is, it has some kind of gothy pop elements to it. Like, I was just thinking how Adam was wearing a Jewish priest shirt in the scene with his apartment, and it's like, that's a bigger on for Adam. And I thought that's So I went, much like how Judas Priest is pretty obvious with whatever they sing with, I went with Cradle of Filth, who's pretty obvious. But it just goes back to those themes of, again, the idea that desire and lust can be so strong and so painful to have that you can forget everything that is holy and go over to the dark side in a very, very desperate attempt to satisfy those desires. But of course, since this is a possession story, of course it comes back to bite you right on the ass somehow. Much like in the song. So yeah, I went with the most obvious choice possible, and I do not regret it, and then if anyone hates me for going on with it, oh well, it's my song choice.
Yeah, I think the other one that I could have picked was Take Me to Church by Hozier, but I did not do that because
I wish
we all got very tired of that song in 2015. I love you, Hozier, but I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. It still fits, but I'm not going to put it on the playlist.
I think 2015 out of all years was guilty for like playing a good song too much. It killed it for you.
Well, yeah. When I started hearing like a club remix of Take Me to Church, I was like, we can't do this. No, I'm not kidding. It exists. It scarred me for life, but it exists.
There's a club mix of Take Me to Church.
Yeah, there's a super upbeat remix of Take Me to Church.
No.
Yeah. I'm sorry to tell you this.
No. I actually like that song too. I mean, I also got really fucking tired of it because it was everywhere.
Yeah, you really couldn't walk like 4 steps without hearing Take Me to Church.
But it doesn't deserve that.
No, it didn't deserve that. It's much better than like what everybody did to it.
God damn it, Maddie. Now I'm going to have to go look up that on the internet, and I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to be pissed off about it. Yeah. And then I'm going to rant to you about it nonstop next time we talk.
I accept this fate because I have brought this upon you.
Shit.
But
fuck.
To make up for it, I will talk about my next pick.
Yes.
Which you're very thrilled about. For once, I've picked, I guess, I don't even know what you would call this because I don't know what like metal is per se. But I heard this song, weirdly enough, I think in public, a few weeks ago, and then when I looked at the lyrics today, that definitely astounded me because I'm not sure why anybody would be playing Closer by 9 Inch Nails in public.
Oh boy. They said that probably...
Sure.
Now, was it like from the radio in public or just someone putting on like a mix?
Okay, so I don't know where I was. I don't know where I was. Like, I sound hounded it because I was like, oh, those lyrics, I recognize them. And then I was like, okay, Closer by 9 Inch Nails. All right, sounds familiar. And then today I was like putting it on this playlist, and then I was looking it up, and then I was reading the lyrics, and then I was just like, very explicit for having heard them in a public place recently. But yeah, it is kind of a filthy song.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to read the lyrics because I look them up if you want to do that. That's your
check out the music video sometime. You'll be in for
I might do that. Yeah, I mean I know the song, like I didn't need to like watch the video at work this morning.
Oh. Make sure it's the unedited version. Make sure it's the director's cut version too.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna explore that in my own time. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's a pretty filthy song about sex. But the whole lyric was, I don't know, they're fitting. It's kind of like, grungy and dirty. And I was like, okay, this fits the comic. But the line that I particularly remembered was, "You get me closer to God," which, like I said before, actually, Daniel, I think, does get closer to God in this. Maybe not in, like, the Nine Inch Nails kind of way, but...
He still gets closer to God.
Yeah. So, anyways, this is, like, the whole middle part of the story for me, I think. So that is why I picked it.
And I'm so happy you did.
My first 9-inch, probably also my last 9 Inch Nails pick, but yeah.
No!
I'd have to start listening to 9 Inch Nails to pick more of their songs, and I don't know that that's where I'm at in my life right now, but I will try to do you proud with future picks then.
Okay. Don't worry, I'm still tempted to do you proud by listening to more of your picks too, which not hard because they're
one time.
What?
I forget what it was. You had like an indie sounding one, and I was just so surprised. I forget which one. It might have been For On a Sunbeam.
Oh yeah. Oh no, like from On a Sunbeam, I was even surprised with myself. I had like my song choice. I had Bjork.
Yeah,
I had
that's right.
an indie folk song choice, which totally uncharacteristic of me. It's like, where the fuck did that come from?
Well, you made up for it by shoehorning septic flush in there.
Yes, inappropriately, and I will admit that now, looking back at it, inappropriately. Speaking of inappropriate, my last song choice, or actually appropriate, because this one is yet another title that is not English, called Desafio, which I believe is Spanish for challenge, and it is by Arca, who is a gay Venezuelan indie, I want to say EDM style artist, but he makes EDM music for all the kinky gothy gays out there. And the Savio is yet another song about desire that is so strong there's something dark about it. In this case, it's not something satanic, but more something almost nihilistic about it. Because Arca in his song desires this whomever they're desiring so much that they want, like, that they're willing to experience oblivion to achieve it. Like, they want to feel this desire for their person so strongly, they want to feel like they're in an abyss over it. This is also the most mellow of my picks, I would have to say. Like, just very... Arca sings with very soft voice, very low key, and the music is not very harsh. It's very, I would say, droning. Not droning, atmospheric, very melancholy in nature, which given what happens at the end of 99 Righteous Men, fits the bill. Especially, again, not giving away too much to any future, to any listeners who are going to read this in the future, but that last panel that's showing Daniel, where he is, and the kind of like how he has his hand on his chest and he has such a mournful look on his face. Mm-hmm. To me, that really just summarizes another thing about the book, is that it is strangely tragic too, and there is still a type of strange tragic romance to it. It's kind of acting like what would have, and I kind of wonder what would happen to Daniel and Adam if their relationship didn't end so terribly that first time around, and Adam ended up pretty much assaulting Daniel when his ability to give consent was very not full. I wonder if, it's like, what if they did not have that between them and they were able to have a life together? And I think that's what Daniel's feeling at that moment, is that sorrow. over what could have been, because in a way, his own desire for companionship is just as strong and pain-inducing as Caleb's is. But whereas Caleb is, and while Daniel, unlike Caleb, was able to lean into God to give him a sense of, I'm still loved, but in a different way by, higher being, it kind of shows that, Caleb didn't have that. But at the same time, Daniel kind of realizes that wasn't enough. It wasn't anything in comparison to an actual person. Mm-hmm. And in a strange way, the thing he's experiencing is in itself, I would say, a spiritual experience that he's having. It's one where emotions are so strong that they can feel apocalyptic, or that they are something that has frozen you in this exact moment in time, and you will always be frozen in this exact moment in time. And for me, that's how Arca feels too. Like, for Arca, this desire is oblivion, because when it happens, there will be nothing else. No moving forward, no moving backward, just staying in this one moment. And if you're stuck in this one moment and everything kind of else just fades away, then it kind of is, in a way, oblivion or entering an abyss, because forever it will be just this moment that sticks with you. And if anything, a good comic ends on an image like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about the end of it, like, all day today.
Oh, yeah? How did...
Yeah, it's so, and, emotional. I don't know any other word for it. It's just, you feel things.
You do.
Yeah.
I bet you weren't expecting that, huh?
Not really. I don't know. Ever since, junior high-ish, when we started reading all, the classics with the terrible endings, I kind of get surprised by happy endings. But at the same time, that didn't lessen the emotional impact this book had on me, so.
Well, the thing is, it's a sad ending, but it's not a nihilistic ending.
No, certainly not.
It's sad because, in a way, there is still that little spark of hope. But it's that little bit of hope that, if anything, makes things just feel sadder. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to describe it, but it kind of makes me think of the ending of Romeo and Juliet, which is also a very tragic ending. Mm-hmm. But it's tragic in that way where it doesn't feel like everything was for naught. It's just that it's so terrible that, these two warring families could only after... they're going to have to live with the regret of what they're rightfully did to their kids. It's tragedy where life is going to move on, but there is still going to be this pain that lingers on. Mm-hmm. It's not going to cripple you from experiencing life, but it's still going to be etched into you somehow. Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly, in a way, what happens to Daniel at the way.
Yeah.
And why I felt like ending on a more tragic, beautifully tragic song is a much better way to end on my personal song choices than something just aggressive or very, very spooky dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of what influenced my pick also. I had Closer written down with the last one, but I think it's more fitting to end on Holy by Frightened Rabbit, which again is a song that I heard in college, but it's kind of less a narrative and more of someone talking to someone who's maybe not necessarily righteous, but like, I guess a little righteous, but like taking the high road, I guess. But it's more about someone who has like fallen in their faith, I guess. Talking to someone who is like quote unquote holy, but it's coming from the perspective of someone who's very flawed. So I thought of Adam when I was listening to this song, which is why I picked it. So yeah, the lyrics on this one are fitting, I think, because I think Daniel does kind of take that position with Adam. I mean, rightfully so, but they're clearly at odds over their perceived like morality, I guess.
Right.
I mean, there's like the elements of repentance in Adam, but he was clearly done wrong. So yeah, I think that's like, it's super fitting from that position. Definitely kind of a downer of a song, but that's kind of characteristic of Frightened Rabbit. So I would say it is fitting both lyrically and it's actually oddly one of the more like the most upbeat song I picked, I think.
Right.
But the lyrics are just kind of a bummer. So
they're a real bummer.
Yeah, they're a real bummer. I'll say it. They're a huge bummer, but fitting, I guess.
Absolutely fitting.
Yeah. So those are my picks.
And those are my picks too.
Yeah.
There were so many more songs that I could have fit in here, but I'm glad that we just went with the balance of both our choices.
Yeah, I think once again we have stuck to our guns a little bit in, the genres that we typically listen to.
Absolutely.
My oddball 9 Inch Nails.
But in the same way, I think that your song choices still managed to fit into the material, and also I am so still proud of you that you went with 9 Inch Nails. And if you ever want to dig deeper into the cesspool that is 9 Inch Nails, I will be your guide. Because there is a lot to cover.
Send me a Google Doc. So
start with the music video.
That later. Next time we do a horror comic.
Yes. Next time just watch the music video to see how filthy they get.
Yeah. On my own time. Not at work.
Gotcha. Alright. Well, I think that is it for this episode. And
thanks for joining us.
Thanks everyone. You can follow me on Twitter @ScaryCleve and keep up with everything I'm doing. What I'm doing currently mostly over at Under the Ink, but also sometimes at Graphic Policy when I feel like it.
And you can find me on Twitter @Madison R. Butler. Right now I primarily write for SideQuest, which is a video game focused blog. I'm also over at Consumption, dissecting most recently The Last of Us, which is horrific in its own way. But Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out in like 4-5 days, something like that. So that's all I'm going to be talking about for the next month probably.
You mean that and One Piece now that you're done with Naruto?
Well, yeah. I'm done with Naruto. Ambitiously watching One Piece, but it's going to be all Kingdom Hearts for quite some time. I'm just throwing that out there, so.
Oh boy. I think one of these days you just should vlog about watching anime and video games.
Well, you can catch me on Twitch streaming sometimes at twitch.tv/Maddie Butler.
Yep.
That's your bag. But when we stream The Last of Us, I'm just a huge scaredy pants. So I can have more jump scares. So.
Well, in that case, I'm definitely going to have to finally get on Twitch and start watching.
Yeah, maybe we should pick songs for that next, and you can throw some 9 Inch Nails in there.
I already know the song.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. I can talk. All right.
Well, everyone, we're signing out.
And see you next time.
See you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.